Okay, so hi Julie.
Hi.
So can you tell me why have you written your book Secure Love?
I wrote Secure Love because I realized that there was a need for two things. One, people to be able to really understand attachment theory. It's become much more popular among kind of the general population in the last 10 years or so. Those of us who work with couples and even people who work in other branches of psychology, we've been using attachment theory for decades to help people sort of make sense of their relationships and make sense of themselves and become better parents. But it wasn't something that was that most people in the general population were familiar with. And so I recognized, hey, there's a real void here. People are starting to learn this information, and it's really helpful to, again, help people, make sense of themselves. But there's this void as far as teaching people what to do with it, how to really use it, not just to make intellectual sense of themselves, but to actually use it to improve their lives and relationships. And the information that I was noticing out there was very kind of surface level. And there's so much more to this theory and so much more to what you can do with it, which takes me to my next point, which is I am a couples therapist. That's what I do. That is my first passion, other than, my family life, which also is very attachment related. I'm, married for 23 years, 6 kids. So I have a lot of personal experience with this work too. And I do this work very successfully with couples. And I use what's called EFT, which is a type of couples therapy, which is based on attachment theory. I use this to help my couples who come to me with these insecure attachments where they're not able to reach each other. They're getting caught up in these awful negative cycles when they try to talk about their relationship needs, or they try to talk about money or parenting, and they're just getting themselves stuck in these negative cycles. As a couples therapist, my job is really to help couples, one, get out of that pattern, kind of as a damage control thing.
Mm.
Let's stop tearing each other apart. Let's stop disconnecting every time we have to talk about something difficult, and then move into bonding conversations, getting to the bottom of these issues that are coming up when couples are fighting, whether it looks like money or what to have for dinner. Underneath that is a lot of unmet needs, unmet attachment needs. I need to feel heard by you right now. I need to feel cared for. I need to feel and know that my needs are matter to you. And so I'm kind of working with both to help them not get in these negative cycles where they stay stuck, and two, get down to that vulnerability underneath the surface where all the closeness and bonding and empathy for each other lies. And it's from that place that real change can start to happen. And so, this is a bit of a roundabout way of answering your question, but I realize people need this. People, I can't see every client, every couple in the world. My colleagues can't see every couple in the world. Not everybody has access to couples therapy. Not everybody has access to really high quality couples therapy. So there's just a real need for more relationship self-help. And I felt like there was an opening for me to come in and kind of put into a book format the process that I use with my couples to help people on their own at home struggling. Yeah.
And how much can you give us a brief overview of attachment theory, and is our modern understanding of it different from when it was first conceived, or is it largely still the same?
I believe it's largely still the same. I mean, it's a pretty simple theory. It's not necessarily simple to help people,
Yeah.
couples who have been really stuck in these negative cycles. It's not necessarily simple to teach them how to grow out of that. I mean, obviously, it took me an entire book to kind of do that. But the theory is look, hey, we're humans. We need to have healthy relationships to thrive in, even in just, if you think of cavemen, I mean, they needed to band together to get shelter, to find food, to stave off predators and other animals. And so it makes sense that we have this inner drive toward feeling safe with other humans. And that is exponentially true when it comes to our really closest others. And so typically for most people, the closest relationships are our parent-child growing up, and then our romantic partnerships later. There are exceptions to that, but that's the case for most people. And so it only makes sense that we're designed to feel really awful and yucky inside when something about that feels threatened. It's just as we are, primed and built to feel uncomfortable when we're hungry, right? We need to eat. That's how we stay alive. And we need to stay safe with our closest others in order to, really to stay alive and to feel okay in the world, and to feel, as if we're the maximum level of fulfilled, along with, other things that are important to being human. And so the theory is that what happens is that when we feel safe with our partner, let's say, because that's what I do as couples work, when we feel safe with our partner, our body is at ease. Everything feels okay in the world. We're in this state of, hey, I'm settled. I've had my meal. I can now go back to work and focus on other things, or my partner and I can enjoy each other together. We can talk about interesting things. We can go and have a nice meal. We can, have sex, all these things that are very bonding, and enjoy our other relationships in the world. And then when that isn't, happening, where we're not feeling safe with our partner, we're not feeling like our needs are being met, or that we're getting the closeness that we're looking for, or that we can resolve these life problems that we have without, hurting each other, then our nervous systems just feel really awful. They feel just on edge, a sense of anxiety. Some people, the anxiety is more associated with what's called an anxious attachment style, which is when my relationship needs aren't going met, I have all this anxiety in my body, and my body is screaming, do something, get help, get reassurance, get connection, get this problem solved. Whereas someone with an avoidant attachment, their body is saying, don't make it worse, or they're sort of like, stuff those feelings away. Let's just ignore them and distract with other things. Let's avoid conflict, so I don't have to feel, overwhelmed by emotional situations that I don't know how to handle because I have pushed my emotions out. And so what happens is if we, kind of take it a step further, so we're starting with this uncomfortable feeling in our body when our relationship feels threatened, how we deal with that discomfort, which would be most people, who have an insecure attachment and don't know how to deal with those feelings in a healthy way. They're going to be that first category, which is anxious attached, and that second category I described, which is avoidant attached, or secure, which I'll explain later. And then what happens is there's this sort of emotional balancing act that people tend to end up in these anxious avoidant relationships, where one partner is, playing this anxious role of reach, close the distance, and the other partner is playing this avoidant role of keep things stable, don't make it worse, don't rock the boat. And there's something to be said for that balance. It's not too much heat and it's not too much cold. It's not healthy, but it's better than constant, hugely escalated fights that go on for days and days and days, or just complete disconnect where we're really not talking about anything. And so that is how these cycles get going that I've described, these negative cycles, because you have usually this anxious attached partner or this avoidant attached partner that come together. And so now we have this third part of the theory, which is how these insecure attachments play out in our relationships.
So that's interesting. So it's not just that it's better than having two partners who are of the same style, insecure style together, but there's something about the anxious and avoidant that get drawn together.
Very
So,
much so.
is that partly people seeing something in someone else that they don't have themselves? Is it that kind of
Absolutely.
thing?
Yeah, definitely. If someone has this anxious attachment style, typically they're just more overwhelmed by their emotions. Their emotions are dominating their decisions in life, as opposed to, this place where people can go, where they're kind of feeling their emotions in their body, and they're saying, okay, this is coming up for me. I'm feeling anxious right now, or I'm feeling kind of sad over this, or afraid or worried. But I can also go into my rational mind and use this emotion as information to kind of guide how I'm going to react to this feeling. Someone with an anxious attachment, they have limited ability to do that, especially in relationships where they just kind of go based on what they're feeling in a moment, without really kind of stepping back and going, okay, what is maybe the best way to go about this situation? And so they are going, for a lot of people, they are going to naturally seek someone who is more cut off from their emotions, which can really look like stability. It's not necessarily stability. It's just a real disconnect from emotions. Now, there's a downside to that quote unquote stability, and the downside is not being able to emotionally connect with others because they can't emotionally connect with themselves. But they do tend to provide some emotional stability to the relationship. And then that person, the avoidant, what they see in the anxious partner is, oh, look, someone is over here having all the emotions for us. Someone is keeping things alive. Someone is fighting to keep the distance closed. There's a dark side to that too, because that drive then becomes can very easily become big negative emotions going into the system. So it's not that either are better or worse than the other. It's really that they're both unhealthy, and they're both playing out together in a way that isn't really healthy. And there are more reasons than that why they're drawn together. A lot of times it's what you're drawn to what's familiar. If you grew up in a home which many people do, where your emotional needs aren't being met, how do you even know what to look for from a partner? How do you even know to find someone who can meet your needs, because you don't really have a felt sense of what they actually are?
I was about to ask, so I mean, it's a relatively simple theory, as you say, so why is it so difficult? Is it primarily an issue of identifying what our needs are in the first place?
That's part of it. Part of just is a lack of awareness of what we really do need from relationships. We're taught right now to create these lists of, we're looking for someone who wants this many children, or has this type of job, or wants to live in this type of play area, and enjoys these hobbies. And those things are all very important, but we're not being taught, hey, we also need to be feeling for how we're experiencing this relationship emotionally. Are you on edge around this person? Are you feeling kind of chronically worried about bringing things up? Are you feeling like maybe, you can't really reach to them for connection? Or is this person coming at you with a lot of hot emotions and kind of chronically feeling like blamed for getting it down wrong, or blamed for letting it down?
Mm.
We tend to, if we didn't grow up in homes where we had that felt sense, and we knew, hey, we can reach and respond to people, and we're going to get responded to most of the time, and it's a good feeling. Again, we just don't know what to look for. So we're sort of trying to get those needs met through all the surface level stuff.
Mm.
And so, yes, that's a big piece. And then that's a complicating factor, right? And then we have this other complicating factor where, because of these unmet needs that we don't have words for, we get into these fights, these negative cycles. And then it starts to look like it's about money, or it's about parenting, or it's about, when are we going to get married? Are we going to get married? And these many things that are different political viewpoints. And then any other topic that they fight about on top of that. And then it starts to look like it's about those things. And it just, people lose touch with what the actual real problem is. And again, it's pretty simple, it's a pretty simple problem, but it's just being covered by these layers of topics and protections and defensive strategies. And so I love it because it's simple, and I know, um, how to use that simplicity to help people that's why I really love this theory, because it is, and it is, people will start to move pretty quickly in therapy when they start feeling safe and with each other, and they'll start moving quickly in their relationship if they're, whatever relationship material they're using. If they feel safe, it's going to stick. And that's what I think a lot of relationship advice is missing, is it's not really helping people get to this place of safety before they even start talking about what relationship changes we're going to make.
Yeah. I mean, is it possible then to change your attachment style from insecure to secure? Or do you just become better at managing having an insecure attachment, responding to the feelings in your body and making choices from a healthier place? Or
Sure.
is that the same thing as developing a secure attachment?
Yes. Yes, that's you just said it, which is if you are practicing those things regularly to not just help yourself, but also reach for help from others and have others who can help you with your emotions. We need to be able to show up for ourselves, but we also thrive when we can reach to others for emotional support, just hearing us out or validating us or comforting us. Instead, if you're getting that healthy way of managing your own emotions and this healthy connection with others, you do start to feel more secure in your own body. Okay, I can handle my feelings. It's hard, they're uncomfortable, but I can start to dive in and figure out better ways to manage these without going into all these behaviors that aren't getting me anywhere. And okay, I am working toward developing more secure relationships with other people. I'm recognizing what I'm needing, who to be drawn to begin with, and how to work through problems with people, how to find people who are willing to work with me here. And that is what creates security. It's the healing that is the security. And so no, my job is never to help partners. Okay, here's what your anxious partner needs. They need a lot of reassurance. They need this, they need that. Like kind of like the love languages a bit, right? My goal is to use those things. Yes, we do need to be aware of what anxious partners are sensitive to or what avoidant partners are sensitive to so that we can work together with that material and understand each other in a deeper way. But if we're just chronically accommodating it, that's not really healing. We're accommodating it in the service of creating safety so that we can create a secure attachment. The goal is secure attachment. Nobody could be happy. Nobody can be fully fulfilled and happy in a relationship that does not have a secure attachment, whether they're accommodating each other or not. Because eventually, if you just keep accommodating and nothing's really shifting, that just breeds resentment.
Yeah, of course. And with someone with a secure attachment, would they be less likely to have such strong physical sensations, or have they always just been better at dealing with them? I guess I'm thinking about more in the realm of trauma, early trauma, really.
Yeah, the people who tend to have those really, really strong emotional sensations and really get overwhelmed and flooded, they do tend to have trauma, because trauma means that they were in situations in life where they were flooded and didn't know what to do, and then now as adults or as older adults, depending on when these traumas took place, they get triggered. They get triggered by anything that might come along. If they had some sort of trauma that was happened under a tree, let's say, whatever it is. I mean, different people have all sorts of different types of traumas. They might be triggered just seeing a tree. So they might be out with their partner and they see a tree and then they get overwhelmed by their feelings. And then that somehow shows up in the relationship as conflict. The other partner doesn't know what to do with those big feelings. Nobody really knows where those big feelings are coming from to begin with. So to go back, yes, some people do get more overwhelmed. Typically that falls into this category of disorganized attachment, which is much more related to trauma. There's bigger feelings, there's more pain, there's more lack of predictability in how they manage these big feelings. Sometimes they might just dissociate and go kind of blank sometimes they might just have, these terrible outbursts and fall apart and get really dysregulated. And, it can look really big and awful on the surface, but underneath it is just intense pain, intense inability to cope with the pain. And they're just almost like drowning kittens. They're drowning, but they can't take in help because of the claws, right? And um, so some people, I think, too, are just born kind of temperamentally more sensitive to emotions. I mean, we know that some people experience physical pain more strongly than other people experience physical pain. So, but the second part is that, yes, you have to, no matter what you're dealing with inside of yourself, whether it's really intense or much more mild, the work really is learning to comfort that and manage that in a way that you aren't doing all these behaviors that really just end up hurting your life and creating more pain and more trauma and harder relationships, and it just all starts to cycle on itself. But as a mother of 6 kids, I can tell you that some people are truly born with more sensitive temperaments. I think one of the parenting therapists that I follow, her work calls it HFKs, high feeling kids.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, there is more work to be done there, unfortunately.
Mm.
More pain is more work you have to do to manage it.
Yeah. And you mentioned therapy and needing to feel safe. I mean, how might attachment issues show up between therapist and client? And is this something that clients should try and talk to their therapists about?
Absolutely. I mean, I think anytime someone is feeling unsafe with the therapist or in the therapy, that absolutely needs to be talked about, because that is the work. That lack of safety is the work. When I'm working with couples, my first job before I say before, but it's not always linear. I'm kind of doing it all sort of at the same time, but nothing works if I don't have safe relationships with each partner. I have to develop that. I have to let them know, like, here in this space, you're going to be heard. I might have to sort of direct you into out of information that's, maybe not in your best interest to spend all of our session on, but I'm going to hear you out. Everybody's going to be understood. Everybody's going to be validated for their experiences. Everybody is going to be held accountable in here for their behaviors and how their behaviors are damaging. And so when couples first show up to me, there might be some mistrust toward me, because for very good reasons. They might mistrust therapists. They might have had bad experiences. They might feel chronically unheard in life by their partner, and they're afraid, oh, here, we're going to just come into this environment and now you're going to side with them. And so my first job is to just create a lot of support and emotional safety. And there is a problem when therapists aren't able to be aware of that, and they're not creating safety, or they're getting in their own negative cycles with each partner about, it could look a number of different ways. That's going to keep things stuck. We do need to not just create safety. There's so much more to it. There's also the actual therapeutic techniques, things that we're doing to the skills or the new experiences we're giving the couples, but none of that lands if the therapist client relationship isn't safe. So it's kind of like a parallel, right? The more safe I am with them, the more the modeling I am doing for them to become safer with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'm treating them like I want them to treat each other, basically.
And the idea of rupture and repair, does that come into therapy as well? Is it kind of,
Yes.
if you fall out with your therapist, is that
Yes.
or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have people, maybe misperceive something that I say. They'll say, well, you told me last week that it's my fault that, he doesn't put the keys away. Right. And I'm sitting here going, wait a minute. That's not, I don't relate to that. Right. And so if I start going, wait a minute, you're wrong, I never said that. What am I telling that person? I'm telling them your perception is wrong. I'm not really interested in hearing more about what you're saying. I'm going to invalidate your emotions. It's more about me kind of sitting here trying to make you see it differently because I feel threatened by being misunderstood. So my job in that situation, because clearly that's a problem now between me and this partner, if they think that I actually said that, they're not going to be feeling safe. And so my response to that needs to be, hey, tell me more about this. What do you remember? Okay, that must be pretty bad for you to be sitting here right now if what's in your mind is I'm against you, or I'm seeing your partner as being the right one. That must be really hard. And just really kind of validate where they are. And then maybe I might come in and say, here's where I may have been going when I said that. I just want to kind of clarify that definitely wasn't my intention, but I do absolutely understand, how you could take it like that and how that would create a problem. And I just want to let you know that I really appreciate you bringing that up, because it really is important to me that you're safe in here. We can't really go forward if we're not safe. And so now I'm modeling to them how to kind of communicate through a conflict like that. And I'm getting that safety back on board. And it's coming from my heart. It's not just therapeutic technique. I have been taught and trained to have those kinds of conversations, but it also is very real inside of me. And I think my clients pick that up, and then that just helps them even more take on that really safe emotional energy in their bodies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when might you recommend individual therapy versus couples therapy, or is it something that happens in tandem quite often?
A good question. I recommend that. Well, first of all, I don't think that it needs to happen in tandem, depending on the type of couples work you're doing. I know the type I do, which is EFT, we are working with the individual as much as we are working with the couple. I really am, I'm providing individual therapy in the context of their relationship, whatever they're bringing to me coming from the relationship. We're working, I'm sorry, either coming from the relationship or impacting the relationship. And so in a way, it can be much more effective work on an individual level, because you're really, their issues are alive in front of you, as opposed to them coming to you and then talking about their issues. And there are those situations where someone would need individual work, and that is when they just can't participate in the therapy because they're too dysregulated. They can't, nothing I can do is helping them feel safe enough to actually settle into the work. Usually I'm pretty good at helping people feel safe, but there are some people that have a lot of trauma and they need, I'll recommend that they go do somatic work, which is helping them learn to regulate their body from the inside, their bodies, instead of just thinking new thoughts. How can we kind of go into those felt places in their bodies to help them learn to find some groundedness, and get themselves out of this terrible, emotional overwhelm. And then there's another type of work called EFIT, which is emotion-focused individual therapy. That is another way that they can help learn to regulate and settle themselves. And so what I have found is that if I do have a problem, if I am having a problem with that, and that person is doing that work on the side, or we take a break, they're much better equipped to come back and be able to do the work. There are other situations, active substance abuse to the point that it's getting in the way of this person being able to do the work, either in therapy or at home, because their substance has kind of taken over. That person would need to get some help with that. Sometimes trauma work, which kind of ties into the being too dysregulated. And, anytime there is, someone, let's say someone is having an affair, but they really do want to work on their relationship, but for whatever reason, they're still stuck in the affair, which sounds very awful and complicated, but it happens. I can't work with a couple who there's an active affair, whether they want to stay in the relationship or not. That affair really has to end, because now we have competing attachment. So that person might need to get some personal work to help them do what they need to do to get out of their stuck place and then come back and devote their energy to the relationship.
That makes sense. Back to individual attachment styles, there's kind of certain skills that come with attachment styles, like you give an example in the book. I mean, people who are good in emergencies, able to push down
Yes.
their emotions, surgeons, paramedics, people like that. I mean, can you change your attachment style and maintain some of that, or is there a kind of inevitability that you will change completely by changing your relationships?
That's a really good question. I think that there might be, I don't know if this has been studied, and I don't know if I can give you the best answer because this is a kind of a new question for me. It's actually a really good one. The goal is to find a balance between engagement with your emotions and not being overwhelmed with them, right? So if you are a surgeon and you're really good at having a fight with your partner that morning and then going to work and completely cutting it off and doing what you need to do with surgery, maybe you would have a bit of a problem if you feel more of emotional engagement and you feel more you know affected by that fight emotionally. But I'm sort of talking myself through the answer here. If you have done that work, then most likely you are able to either A, work it out with your partner in a better way, that you aren't feeling so intense and scared. So that's going to A, help you. And then B, you're able to kind of hold both. Okay, I am really stressed over this situation. It's awful. I don't like that we left this dangling fight and this dangling disconnection. But at the same time, I trust that we have the skills to get through this later. I trust that I can kind of find a grounded, centered place in my body. And the odds are high that actually this can help you be better at what you do. But, I don't know. You're asking someone who has a really hard time even imagining how people can go to bad car accidents, and so it's really difficult for me to even go there emotionally. So I will say this: I know this for a fact. No matter how much it kind of directly affects whatever advantage in life you have by shoving off your emotions, the payoff is trumps that, because overall you're going to have a much much better life.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And say couples aren't making any progress, do you have any kind of golden questions people can ask themselves about whether it really is time to kind of call it quits and leave the relationship?
I do. If one or both partners just really isn't able to get down into their vulnerability and start talking about those deeper experiences, their unprocessed griefs that are showing up as behaviors that are contributing to these negative cycles, their unexamined fears, their insecure parts of themselves. I mean, all of these things are the areas where I really have to go in and help people in those places and help them start to put words to those places so that they can really show their partner who they are, and show them and express to them, here's why I shut down, because I'm so overwhelmed in these moments that I don't know what to do and I don't know how to be enough for you. And it's terrifying for me. And somewhere in me is this big fear. What you see is you see me just checking out. But really that checkout is about how afraid I am to not be close to you or to lose you. And it can be really powerful when someone hears their partner start talking about this for the first time. It's interesting because before I came on here today, my husband's here with me in London, and we were talking about just somehow we started talking about what motivates us to help each other. And I said, for years we argued about money. That was a big one for us. My husband grew up 11 of 13 children. He was very financially conservative. They did not have a lot of money. And I am more likely, I don't consider myself irresponsible with money, but I'm more likely to be comfortable spending and having a little fun in life. And so we argued for years, and for years it was him being mad at me. And for years, I only saw his frustration and anger around it. And it wasn't, and that just made me want to do what I wanted, or, prove my independence, or just go around him or whatever. But when it wasn't until I started learning about his fears and he started to tell me, this scares me. I lie awake at night, because of what I grew up in. And I know what it's like to have government cheese delivered to your house, and I have this family to take care of. I worry. And I also worry because I don't know if you care about those fears and needs of mine. And then so when you go and spend money and then I start to feel like, why doesn't she care about my worries? Now, the tricky part here is he wasn't sharing them with me. He was just acting them out. So that was what makes me want to change and start meeting him where he's at. If I can't get couples to the point where they're able to go down into those places, and some people just, they ultimately will not go there. It's too much. They've had too much in their life. Then they can't do this work, and they probably are going to stay compromised in their relationship. It doesn't happen a lot. I don't see it a lot. And then even if it does happen, sometimes I can just stay with them, even though they're not really progressing in the therapy. They're at least progressing in their relationship with me and feeling safe. And the more safe and secure I can bring to the therapy relationship, the better able they are to start doing the work, because they're starting to experience something they've never experienced in their whole life, which is a safe relationship. And then, yeah, so I think it's pretty much going to boil down to, if someone, for whatever reason, they're so blocked by getting vulnerable. And then we have this other issue, which is some people truly are incompatible. Some people, no matter if they can have the healthiest relationship and the greatest emotional connection of all, one, they have a whole different value system, or one wants kids and the other one doesn't, or one has no sex drive, the other one has a high sex drive. There are some times that those situations are deal breakers. And so I always say my goal is never to keep a couple together. My goal is to help them become healthy, so that they can talk about these things. And if they do part ways over those areas of incompatibility, that they do it outside of these horrible negative cycles. And not only are they now practicing being healthy for their next relationship, but they also get to walk away with some clarity, which is, this wasn't a communication issue. We did it. We did the work. And we're still too far apart in these areas.
Sad, but better.
Yes, it's better than staying stuck and unfulfilled in life. So, but I don't, to be honest with you, most of the time that's not what I experience. Most of the time it's a communication problem. It's an emotional unmet emotional needs problem, more than it. And then on top of that, when we start helping people get their emotional needs met, they become less rigid. They become more flexible about your needs and my needs, and more able to work with each other, which just starts to resolve any incompatibility that was there to begin with.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Julie. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.